Thank you very much. We have a very simple agenda for you tonight. And first of all, I want to thank you for the warm welcome and the chance you gave us to escape New Zealand after the elections. Even though you tried to stop us with your air traffic control problem yesterday. And we tried to stop ourselves with a few crises in Auckland Airport, but we made it here. We'll give you a brief introduction on a couple of things. First, what's Westpac New Zealand? Yes, we are from New Zealand. I'm not going to apologize for that, even though a friendly cameraman reminded me of that. Introduction on the scenarios we're going to use just to set the picture for the case studies and the bridging the gap to AI from there on. And then a short conclusion. You, I'm sure, know about Westpac Group, Australian major bank. And New Zealand, and oh, by the way, this is drawn to scale, is one of the big brands of Westpac Group. We cover the whole of New Zealand, of course, and we've been in business in New Zealand for 156 years. It's a summary view of Westpac New Zealand in the context of Westpac Group, 200 years in Australia, so we're quite proud of that. You can see the major numbers there in terms of number of branches in New Zealand, asset managed, et cetera.
Cool, and when we look at some of the things that we're really proud of at Westpac New Zealand, in our business, over half of our leaders are women, which is something I'm really proud of, and a company that I'm really proud to work for. And we do a lot of work around being sustainable in our business, and we've been recognised for that a few years in a row now by being one of the world's most sustainable companies. And we do a lot of work with our community as well around things like financial literacy. So we do that by working with children, but also through some of our innovations like CashNav, which is an app that gives you much more real-time information about where you're spending, how you're spending, and where potentially you've got opportunities to maybe reduce some spending and convert it more into savings instead. So our vision at Westpac is to be one of the world's leading service companies. That shouldn't be hopefully too much of a shock for you because it's the same as Westpac Australia. And we want to be able to help our communities and our people prosper and grow. That's really the aim of why we're in business. And for us, so we focus on some core facets in order to achieve that. One is through service leadership, so making sure that we've got people who are empowered, who know what they need to do, and can help customers achieve the goals that they need to achieve or want to achieve. We also, in order to support that, we look at things like digital transformation. So I mentioned CashNav before, and so those types of innovations have had us recognised by CanStar, which is an award around the abilities of us to be able to provide innovative solutions to our customers. And digital transformation also is around how we engage with our customers. In New Zealand, it's obviously geographically where we've got pockets of high density customers and areas where there's not so many people, and so getting services to all of those areas can be a bit of a challenge, especially during winter and things like that when there's snow and stuff, so we aren't always easily able to get things like trucks and stuff, courier vans and things like that to move money around. So being more digitally savvy and being able to take our customers on that journey is really important and vital to us in order to make sure everyone is able to interact with us the way they want to. Performance discipline. So that's obviously making sure that we're doing the right things at the right time and doing all the right checks and balances. So in banking, it's a highly regulated industry, as I'm sure most people know. So making sure that we're doing the best for our customers and making sure that their interests are secure and safe is really important to us. Targeted growth. So looking at the areas that we want to invest in and performing well in those areas, and recognising that there may be needed to be additional investment in certain places in order to help us achieve that growth. And last but not least is workforce revolution. So as we, with our staff, people want to be able to work more flexibly. They don't necessarily want to work, 9 to 5 every day. People want to be there to see their kids give performances at school. They want to be there to be able to pick them up. They want to do other things with their family, and that's a really important part in terms of our staff's lives. So the workforce revolution for us is around how do we enable that through things like RPA or AI. How do we give some time back to our people so that they can do things that they want to do, be it if it's with their family or maybe additional training or upskilling within their role.
So this focus on service is a great segue for the use of RPA as well as artificial intelligence. In this day and age, to be cost competitive and to drive the level of service that the customers expect in the timely manner that they expect, we do need to use technology to achieve that. And I blanked. There are two major groups of challenges that we try to address with RPA and artificial intelligence in due course. The first one is around our customers. The other one is around our staff. From a customer point of view, as Michelle was talking about our service promise, we want to create a really top-notch service experience and digital experience for that matter as well. Delivering speed in the interactions with the bank, as well as reducing rework. And when I talk about rework from a customer point of view, it's not only rework in the back room, in the back office of the bank where we might make mistakes and we want to remediate those, but also rework from the point of view of the customer. There's the idea of this social contract between us, the bank, and the customer. If I ask you for information, there is an unwritten contract that says that I will reuse that information as much as possible. I'm not going to keep asking for it over and over again. And I will make it my problem to deliver the service that you expect with the least friction as possible, so you don't need to rework things. Typical examples that we're going to talk about are identification, documentation for loans, for credit cards, for insurance. Most of the time, we have that information already, and we don't want to make the customer's problems to provide that information just because we can't find it. From a staff point of view, you have the counterbalance of that. The experience for our staff tends to be quite challenging given the number of legacy systems, and I know this is a common problem. So the level of integration behind the scenes is something that RPA is going to help us a lot, helps already quite a bit, as well as the usability of those legacy systems. When I'm in a call center, I'm dealing with 4, 5, 6 different screens with different systems while I'm on the phone with the customer trying to provide the level of service that appears to be frictionless. And putting those two together set the picture for what we're trying to deliver in terms of our service promise, as I mentioned before. So how do we link up RPA and artificial intelligence? To start with, I'll just paint a picture of AI today. So this is Gartner's hype cycle of emerging technologies for 2017. And if we filter that briefly, there's quite a bit of artificial intelligence in there. You're going to receive a copy of this, and you can Google Gartner hype cycle, and you see the picture as well. But we have things like machine learning. We have things like conversational interfaces. We have things like cognitive expertise or assistance, where robo-advisor type situation. We have mortgage conversational robots here in Australia from NAB. We have many examples worldwide in terms of chatbots trying to provide quote-unquote advice, or at least try to help with decision-making. And on the leading edge of the curve, on the left-hand side, we have the promise of artificial general intelligence, which is the first step towards the so-called singularity. And as you can see there, and I agree with Gartner, is in the beginning of the hype. And depending who you talk about, is in 10 years or in 100 years, we're going to achieve that. That's the prerequisite for us to actually have true artificial intelligence in our scenario here, in our business scenario, interacting with our customers, where you have free-form conversation and pretty much general ability to provide service.
So we're going to talk to you about 4 or 5 different types of AI technology today. So this is just a brief introduction to those. So the first that we're going to be talking about when we give you some examples of how we've utilised RPA in our business is around text-to-speech or speech-to-text. So for us, that gives us a lot of abilities to expand who have used RPA today. We don't always have a lot of digital inputs into our process. Often they're written or they're spoken requests from customers. So being able to utilise something like that would be beneficial for us. The next that you'll see is around voice biometrics or facial recognition biometrics. So again, for us, that removes some of the annoyance that I'm sure you've all experienced when you rung up a contact centre and they go through and ask you a list of questions. And if you're like me and you forget sometimes where you lived a few years ago and you get those questions wrong, you then have to traipse into an office somewhere to prove that you are who you say you are. So utilising that technology can help us remove some of that frustration. But one of the examples we'll talk you through around the work that we do with lawyers can also benefit from this type of AI option. The third that we're going to talk to is around chatbots and topic identification, that type of interaction, which again helps us channel all of the work into the right areas without having to have someone sit there and choose where potentially a request should have to go to or what channel it might need to work down.
Getting to the end, as Michelle noticed, topic identification is something that will be required as you're trying to increase your level of intelligence in these automated channels, gearing towards a self-creating program behind the scenes that you haven't pre-programmed at all. It will be the system that, based on the conversation, based on the topics, recreate the sequence of tasks behind the scenes to drive then perhaps RPA as part of a full circle of service in the scenarios. So if you look at the scenarios, we'll use 3 life stages just to create some boundary on the description and to give you some idea of the benefits we achieved with RPA and where we could, we should, or we may be doing some of the AI complementary implementation around the edges there. First one is, as I had quite recently, my son is going to university, has a bank account with Westpac. He's flatting now in Christchurch and needs to change address. And anybody that tried to change address with any utility company, with any bank, insurance, etc., know how painful that is, to the point that the last one I did, I had to send a fax.
The next life stage we're going to talk about is when you buy a house. So whether it's your first home or an additional home that you're buying, or you're moving to a bigger and better home that you're looking for, that whole process can be fraught with frustrations and it can be time consuming. And the day that you are actually settling for that house and you are wanting to move in is probably one of the most frustrating days probably that you have experienced potentially. So if you're like me when I was buying my first house, I was ringing probably the bank or my lawyer every couple of minutes to see when I could get the code to get into my house. So I didn't have to get keys, which is great, just a door code. But you're sitting outside the house going, all I need is 6 little numbers. Just 6 little numbers, and I would really quite like them now because I've got movers on the way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that whole piece around you're starting to buy a house. And then the last piece that we're going to talk about is reducing debt. So hopefully after you've bought a house and you've been living in it for a little while, you may have paid down your mortgage a little bit, you may have some extra cash, so you might have been saving up some money, and potentially you might want to use that to actually pay off some of the debt that you've got, which is a great option, it's a great win. We always want to encourage customers to do that. And so we're going to look a little bit about how we can help utilising RPA and AI to make that a lot more seamless for customers.
So we're going to use those 3 life stages, those 3 scenarios, and what we will do is increase the level of artificial intelligence around the edges of the RPA as we're going along.
Cool, so the first one, moving out. So as Paulo said, in a banking context at Westpac New Zealand, every product has its own system, which will contain an address for you. So when we get an address change, it's not quite as simple as that may seem. It normally means that a staff member has to notice what other products you've got and then go and change the address in multiple systems. And for some products, they won't have access to the system to actually make their address change. So they'll need to send a request off to either an external company or to other teams within the business, more specialised teams, for them to do those address changes. So what we've been able to utilise RPA for is to reduce some of that complexity for our people. So our customers have the ability to log into our online banking portal and tell us that they've changed their address, which is cool. They don't have to ring up and wait to talk to us or go into a branch. What used to happen is after the customer seamlessly entered in their new address, it would then send a request to someone sitting in one of our back offices, who would then open that little email and then go and change everything. So as much as for the customer it seemed like there was this great new way to do the address change, for us it was business as usual. It was the same process we've always done, which, as you could imagine from a customer perspective, can cause a bit of miscommunication or disjointedness. When something seems so automated and simple, you can then start to wonder why a week later your address is still the same as what it was, right? You kind of go, how can this happen? How does it take so long? So by utilising RPA, what we've done is actually automate all those address changes. When our customers enter their new address in our online portal, there's no validation around that, so it doesn't check to make sure the address is actually valid. So RPA does that check for us, so it uses an API call to the New Zealand Post website and also to Google to confirm that their address is a valid address, because some of our customers live outside of New Zealand, and their choice, they can go live somewhere else. So we need to be able to validate across multiple sources. It will then go and update that customer address across the different systems that it may need to in order to make sure it's correct. So through that channel, around 70% of our online requests using RPA are automated now. So you're probably going to ask what's wrong with the other 30%. Unfortunately, I can't stop you typing a random address. I also can't stop you pranking us by writing just abusive things in your request sometimes. People get bored on Saturday nights, I think. So sometimes we can't kind of stop at the moment how customers choose to enter some of that data. We could have added some extra validation into the online channel. And we've also noticed a 50% increase in the volumes that we've been getting. So historically, when people were doing this task, we would have had to increase the FTE in order to manage these requests. We haven't had to do that. We've been able to absorb that as part of this. And as well, we're able to run the address changes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's no more, if you submit your address on a Saturday, that you have to wait till Monday for it to be done. All in all, so far what we've seen is around 2,500 work hours of time that's saved from using RPA for this piece of work.
So how can we improve that level of service? Many of these requests might come via the contact center. It's easier for me to call somebody, even though if I might have to wait or be put on virtual hold and be given a call back, than find a fax machine and fax my change of address. So the natural extension of the RPA is to try to create a fully experience across all the channels using natural language, using voice to text, and then using top identification to find out exactly what you're trying to achieve. When you're dealing with a chatbot, which is one of the things we are doing, and we have, as everybody else in the world, I think, a chatbot in training. Ours is being trained by staff internally. We haven't gone to market yet. But one of the key things you do is try to identify what is the utterance, what is the sentence that is being typed or has been spoken through a voice channel, and then decide what you need to do about it. What is the topic and what are the entities in that sentence. In the case of change of address, the topic is change of address, and then you want to know what are the bank accounts, is it your home address, your business address, is it temporary, is it permanently? So there are a number of permutations there that artificial intelligence can help you by doing the natural language analysis or sentence text analysis at the back of voice to text. And at the other end is the reply, is having as personalized as possible, avoiding the uncanny valley of you thinking you're talking to a human and then it gets strange and then gets creepy and you don't want creepy. But you're dealing with a bot and you get a good experience out of that conversation. And you need to create the conversation in a way that you can then, if you're in a voice channel, do the reverse, which is the text to speech. So quite a simple one, and we'll build up on those technologies in the next two.
So you're at the stage of your life where you're just wanting to buy a home. So hopefully some of you guys have bought a house. I won't ask for a show of hands, but hopefully people have been through that process.
Not in New Zealand, we can't afford
Yeah,
it.
in New Zealand we can't afford one, so only the privileged few get those. But essentially, when you're buying a house, one of the last steps before you purchase the house is once you've got your mortgage approved and all your loan documentation and that have been signed off, is we need to transfer those funds to normally your solicitor's account in order to pay the person you are purchasing the property from. So if I ask what day of the week do people normally want to buy a house on or settle their house on, what would you say? Friday, right? No one wants to move house on a Tuesday, it seems. Be easier for us if they did, but they don't want to. They always want to buy them on a Friday. So as you can imagine from that, we get a few requests during the week, but on a Friday, we have a huge amount of requests. So it becomes a real struggle to try to get all those requests done by 11 in the morning, which is the time that we try to have all of those done by. Which means that when we're trying to get all those settlements done by 11 o'clock in the morning, what happens to the ones that aren't going so well? They all wait. So there's no one there to deal with the more complicated settlements for things like construction loans. There's no one there to deal with the person who's maybe changed their solicitor at the last minute and they haven't told us, so the funds have already gone to the old solicitor. So there's no one to deal with any of those issues until in the afternoon. So as a customer, you're sitting there getting more frustrated. You've probably got a moving truck full of your furniture sitting somewhere that are charging you to move their items. And you're just getting probably more and more agitated about the whole process. So by utilising RPA in this piece of our process network has really been about trying to improve the service for our customers, getting them into their home quicker, easier and smoother than what it was before for them. So with utilising RPA, we're able to complete all of our settlements by 9 o'clock, regardless of whichever day it is. So even if it's a Friday when it's really busy, they're all done at 9. Our poor robots start about 5 o'clock in the morning, which is good for them. We have obviously system downtime, so they can't kind of start too much earlier than 5. And we utilise multiple robots to do that work on a Friday, because one is just not enough. So we utilise quite a few. And that means from the time that the staff start in that department now, which they tend to start around 7 in the morning, they're able to start looking for the things that aren't going well. So they're able to deal more with the construction loans, which tend to be a little bit more of an issue for us. And they're able to deal with any kind of oddities or phone call requests that they might get from a solicitor at the last minute about something they might want changed. And what that has enabled us to do so far is to save over 5,000 hours of work time for that team of people, and they've actually been able to pick up additional tasks from our frontline network to do, which they weren't doing before. So it's given our frontline teams, so in our branches and contact centres, more capacity in their time, in their day, to deal with customer face-to-face meetings and things like that, rather than sitting processing things at a computer, which isn't really their core function. Their core function in our branch is to sit and talk to our customers. That's what we want them to do. So ultimately, using RPA has given us a lot of benefit, but as Paulo will show you, that using AI would kind of round that out a lot more.
So if you think of it as a sequence of events, everybody is moving on Friday. You are first home buyer. You are the last one in the chain. You will probably wait till 6 o'clock in the afternoon in normal circumstances before everybody settles before you and you get the keys for your house. And the truck has been waiting there since 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's how you've been promised. So we want to speed up that process. So let's say that the first one in the sequence of events is a lawyer that calls the bank and says, we're okay to settle. Everything is done, please progress. The idea here, we identify the lawyer or the person that has been authorized to start up the process with voice biometrics or with face recognition. They're in front of their computer, they hit the button, they might be integrating with the chatbot, and we understand from the topic recognition that they are settling a particular account or a particular contract, loan, and the process then starts from there. At the moment, I will probably send an email, or I'll probably call the call center, or I'll probably, if I'm lucky, send a fax. We want to speed up the process and then close the loop at the other end, where the process will run, and instead of hitting refresh and see if the money has showed up in the account, so I can tell the other lawyer that, yes, I received the money, now you can release the keys. That is all then facilitated by this ecosystem of systems that are creating the frictionless experience for our customers end to end. Multiple customers, multiple settlements, all linked up through a single virtual conversation and through a single system integration behind the scenes enabled by RPA.
So last but not least in our kind of life cycle journey is hopefully after a few years you've made a bit of a dent in the mortgage. You might be in a state that you're ready to pay off your mortgage potentially, you've got some savings set aside. So one of the tasks that we do for customers in that situation, especially if you've got a fixed term loan, is we need to understand what it might cost you in order to break that loan, because there could be some penalty fees around paying off that debt a bit faster. So we get those requests at the moment through the phone, mainly through the phone. We will get some customers that will email us that request. And then what our staff will need to do is access around 3 or 4 different systems and take bits of information from all of those systems and enter them into a whole different system that'll calculate what the break cost amount might be for that loan, or however much they may wish to pay down on that loan. There's some real risks around that process, which around kind of miskeying of information. So if you choose a wrong loan that the customer wanted to break, so the wrong amounts, it's going to give you the wrong break cost calculation, as well as if you enter the wrong type of loan that the customer might have. So they might be on an interest-only loan, it could be on a table loan. So depending on what type of loan it is, which you enter into the calculator, will determine a different break cost amount. Once we've done the break cost for the customer, we then send them out a break cost leaflet, essentially, which will tell them how much the break cost will be, and then they can say, yes, I want to break it based on that amount. If we've entered the wrong information, we then have to honour what we've given the customer. So if we've made a mistake and said that your break cost is going to be $500, but in reality it's going to be $5,000, there's a big loss there potentially for us, because it's a little bit hard to go back to the customer and say, oops, we made a mistake. Now you need to rethink everything you've just decided upon. So there's some definite risks there with us. So by utilising RPA, what we've been able to do is essentially put in a small template for the staff to complete. So it asks for 3 pieces of key information. So the account number of the loan that the customer wants to break, because that's really vital. How much they're wanting to pay down of the loan, so is it the whole loan, or is it just a portion of it? Because sometimes people might have saved $20,000 or $30,000 and they just want to get rid of that piece. And then it'll ask kind of what it wants to do, what do you want to do with the rest of the loan once it's broken. So they fill in those 3 pieces of information, and then the RPA service will pick that up, and it'll go away across all the different systems we have, take all the information from there, enter it into our calculator. It then sends off the request to the customer and says, hi Michelle, you wanted to break this loan, the break cost for it is going to be $500, do you want to proceed or not? And the customer's got an option to click if they do or don't want to accept that. That comes back in. A staff member will just check it and confirm with the customer that that's definitely what they want to do. And then the automation will go and process the rest of the transactions. So that means it'll have to charge some fees off to the customer, and it's got to reduce some mortgage values and things like that as well. So all of the kind of key transactional tasks are completed using the automation. So that's reduced a whole lot of errors and rework for us. Customers get the requests a hell of a lot faster than what they did before. So they could be waiting a couple of hours probably. At the moment, the RPA service kind of looks for a new task every 5 minutes to work. And we've put it into just one of our business units, not any of our big, large units. We've put it into a small team that look after kind of our private customers. And at the moment, that's producing around 5,000 hours worth of benefit in that one team. And they probably do maybe 10% of our whole break cost work. So we're just in the process of rolling that out into some of our other kind of smaller niche markets before we put it into our frontline for our kind of mass market segments.
So now imagine you have a service agent with infinite patience. My wife, when we renegotiate mortgage last time, spent 2 hours on the phone talking about the options and the fixed versus floating rates and the mix of the two and the variations and the multiple scenarios. Now imagine that this RPA scenario now is bookended by artificial intelligence. I can have the conversation with my robo-advisor. I will first identify myself, the biometrics kicks in, it's Paulo on the line, I know who you are, I know what your products are, and now I understand through the topic identification what you're trying to do, which is a break fix, and I have the conversation now with Paulo on what you want to do. Do you want a mix or not? And I can understand your sentence because I can say I'd like to renegotiate my floating loan for my home, and I want to rebalance my fixed floating rate to take opportunity of the low fixed rate you advertise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is a really, really complex conversation that most of the AIs cannot cope with because of the multiple entities and the multiple topics in the same sentence. But the robo-advisor or the chatbot through voice to text or through conversational interfaces can now start breaking down and guide that conversation. I kick up the RPA, I provide the feedback. Because of the nature of the RPA, I'll probably have to call back, but I'll call back and I'll pick up the conversation where I was. And the exciting bit for me as an old-timer computer scientist is my ability now to restructure my programming for that bot on the fly. I will rewrite the program based on the options and based on the next conversation that I'm having with the customer and create the new conversation that hasn't been programmed yet out of the building blocks that I have and then re-engaged. And then the process repeats itself. Nothing of this is computer science. If you Google Siri and the creators of Siri, their chatbot is like that. So they haven't gone live yet, but they are in the process of raising funds, et cetera. But their chatbot is quite exciting because it doesn't, well, it will require very little programming. And the chatbot will string together building blocks of conversations on the fly based on what it's understanding, which eliminates quite a bit of the problems for chatbots today, which is to understand the complex conversations and having to program them in one way or another to be able to enable the bot to have the interaction with the customers from that point on. So this scenario will bring all of that together, from my biometrics to voice to text to conversation interfaces to program on-the-fly program generation to closing the loop and carry on with that conversation. Of course, topic specific, but quite exciting in terms of the potential. So if we then look at all of this together and the three things to take away from our point of view. First one is RPA will pay.
So what we've seen so far between all the processes that we've automated, which we've got around 35 processes in our organisation that we've used RPA on, is we normally see around a 40 to 80% reduction in processing time for that request to happen. You know, the RPA software is not interrupted by a phone call, it's not stopped by somebody going past your desk wanting to have a chat to you, it doesn't need to go to the bathroom, which is all benefits of using the software. What we tend to see is when we put something into production is we normally need to wait a month or so to make a few tweaks and things like that in order to really ramp up the benefits that we have. Unfortunately, people don't always tell you all of the variations that happen within a process when you're talking to them to begin with. We get really close to 100% accuracy, so for the stuff that goes through RPA, it's accurate. We still have stuff that falls out of our processes, unfortunately. Not every customer wants exactly the same thing, so we still need to cater for customer requests that aren't the stock standard. And as I mentioned before, we have a much faster turnaround time and a much better customer experience, which is really the key around what we're utilising RPA for. So that's a big benefit for us around getting our customers a better experience in a faster time with less hassle, less having to come back to us and change what it is that they want to talk about.
The last two are interrelated. Did I click too much? First one is you need to be ready for RPA and for artificial intelligence. There are three main things that you really need to think about. First one is the combination of people and expertise. you have to have people in-house that understand the technology, even if you're engaging with external vendors. There's a lot of internal business knowledge that is required for you to implement either RPA or AI, and you need to have that understanding in-house.
I think the other thing with the people aspect as well is to be honest and upfront with the people that you are working with. So not just the people who are having to use the software to build automated processes, but also the people whose jobs that you're affecting. So the biggest lesson for us is about being really upfront with them, that the reason of us using RPA wasn't to get rid of people within our business. And we're very clear about that with our people. If that's the only reason you'd be looking at RPA, I would suggest that you probably got the wrong idea around what you can achieve using the software. For us, it meant sitting down and talking to our people about the opportunities that RPA is going to create for them. So the fact that, yes, you're not going to sit at a desk and change addresses all day, every day, but how fulfilling was that job for you? And I'd say for most of you, if I said that that was going to be your job for the next 20 years, you'd all say, I wouldn't really want to do that job. Well, neither did the people who were doing that job anyway. They didn't want to sit there and change addresses. So it was about talking to them about opportunities around what else do they want to do, what other opportunities could we bring into that business unit, what other opportunities are there for our whole business with that freed up capacity.
Elements of risk and compliance, your bots are going to perform transactions as a staff member, so the same level of segregation of duties and security will have to apply. Be careful with market hype. The vendors will be very keen to sell you something. A lot of it is really good. You just need to be careful with where you're betting the farm on. And you need a lot of data. Any artificial intelligence algorithm will require a lot of data and a lot of computing to enable it. And finally, adopt AI with care. Similar to the market hype, look for opportunities with the technologies. They are reasonably mature. If you go with a niche player, know exactly why you're going with the niche player, rather than going with Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, as your supplier of the AI algorithms, computing power, and even training capability. This is Forrester wave, similar to the Gartner one. And you can see things like machine learning platforms, virtual agents, and RPA in the growth close to equilibrium type position in the time frame. And that's us.